Sorry, I just received a text message that I have to respond to concerning the link. So bear with me. All right. This this afternoon. Okay, this afternoon, uh, we are here in this forum, and I count it an honor and a privilege to be able to uh, talk about a sensitive topic that affects our community, affects our family, and it's quite possible that we would have known someone who would have been affected or impacted in one way or the other by what we will be discussing. And like I said earlier on, mental health is, our business is something that every single person would have had some encounter with, whether directly or indirectly. And for this reason, we are here this afternoon to discuss. We have some esteemed individuals among us who are going to weigh in on the subject matter. And I'm pretty sure we will not be able to exhaust the topic because it is so vast. When you talk about mental health, you're talking about various parts and components of mental health that affects individual in one way or the other. We will touch on depression. We'll be able to touch on dealing with hurt, anger management, and the real elephant in the room, which is suicide. That's something that we don't fully understand. I'm pretty sure we have so many questions about. I'm just going to do a quick introduction of the various individuals who are going to share this afternoon. We have on Zoom. We have on Zoom Dr. Edwin Powell. He's a full-time faculty member at Howard University College of Medicine and duly appointed in the Department of Pediatrics and Child Health, as well as the Department of Community and Family Medicine. Dr. Powell is also a researcher in the Division of Geriatric, where he works alongside highly trained scientists, exploring ways to detect early signs of dementia. Dr. Edwin is a skilled and educational psychologist, gerontologist, with more than 20 years of relevant assessment and evaluation experience. He proudly serves on the board of directors for the Johnson Towers Senior Living Facility in the District of Columbia, which is a member of the Elderly Housing Development of Operation Corporation. So Dr. Powell serves on the District of Columbia Superior Court panel of examiners in the probate division, where he is appointed and responsible for evaluating the capacity of individuals prior to guardianship, and conversatorship, hearing. My print is very small, I do apologize. And throughout his professional life, formerly as a high school principal with the District of Columbia Public School and federal analyst, he has proven to be a leader and an advocate for most in need. Dr. Powell received a Bachelor of Arts in Psychology from Rutgers University, Masters of Arts in Gerontology, College of Notre Dame, an MED in Psychology, Howard University, an MA in Counseling, Liberty University, Doctor of Arts in Educational Psychology, George Mason University, Certificate of Advanced Graduate Studies in Homeland Security, University of Maryland, Certificate of Advanced Graduate Studies in Curriculum and Instruction, George Mason University, in Studies in Public Diplomacy and Political Warfare at the Institute of World Politics. He is a 2004 recipient of a Lifetime Achievement Award in Educational Leadership and a 2006 humanitarian honoree for his contribution to child advocacy and education. And a 2016 recipient of honorary doctorate in human letters, honorees for his work in human rights. He has interests and publications in disability advocacy, education, mental health and law. He is married to Dr. Elizabeth H. Hobson Powell. I do apologize if I butcher that name, Doc. An analyst, at the Health Resource Service Administration. They have 4 adult children, Latoya, T, Queen, and Reed. So I introduced to us today Dr. Edwin Witt Powell, who is going to be on Zoom. And so we want to welcome you, Doc, to this forum, and we're so happy that you decided to grace us with your presence and to agree to share some of your wealth of knowledge with us and experience. We also have with us Dr. Dan J. Thomas, who is also a son of the soil. Dr. Thomas is a native island of St. Lucia. For those, and Dr. Thomas, I'm just sharing for those of you who may not know him, just like Dr. Powell, some of his achievement, as it would be. He's a native from the native island of St. Lucia, who is proud of his St. Lucian heritage, and more importantly, he's a proud servant of God, a child of God, who has called him out of darkness into marvelous light. He was raised by a single mother in a small rural community in the south of the island, and who shared emphasis on the importance of education as a pathway to eradicate poverty, and also, Dr. Thomas has been immensely blessed to have attained many academic achievement in diverse specialties for which he is immensely humble. Along his areas of academic matriculation and political science, business administration, healthcare management, law, education, and leadership. Dr. Thomas regards most prestigious among his title, Sinner Saved by Grace. In the capacity that he is sharing today, he shares both as one who is a counselor of healthcare and also one who is qualified as in business law. Dr. Thomas, we are happy to have you at WIMAC today. We also have, just bear with me, Sherry Ann King. Sherry Ann King, after this, you will get a chance to see everyone. Sherry Ann King is a social service professional, correctional counselor with the NYC Department of Correctional Rikers Island, sorry. Sherry Ann King holds a master's, an MBA from Mercy College in Dobbs Ferry, New York, and presently pursues an online master's degree in habilitation counseling at the University of Buffalo in hopes of becoming a licensed certified rehabilitation counselor. Throughout her career, she has worked in various nonprofits and government organizations, serving those in need of public assistance, the justice system, and the shelter system. Her expertise is in motivational interviewing, vocational readiness, crisis intervention, group work, and individual counseling. Sherry Ann strives to serve others and help develop the lives of those in need. And finally, one of our participants couldn't make it, but we have another one who is in-house with us who is going to make a 15-20 minutes presentation as part of our discourse here today. She's my good friend and former colleague. She worked at community counseling services together with me when I was a full-time worker there as well. As a functional family therapist, Mrs. Morrow is a proud mother of two beautiful children, one son, one daughter, and the wife of Marcus Jean. She is qualified in family therapy. She has a passion for mental health and seeing the well-being of others. And you will be hearing from Morrow today, and you will be able to attest that truly the position that she's speaking from is a position of passion as she present today. So without any further ado, I'm going to call on Mrs. Maureen Morrow, my friend, as she makes her presentation today. Miss Morrow.
It's good. It's good. Good afternoon, everybody. God is good all the time. hmm It is a pleasure for me to be with you all today. It's been a while. It's been a while since I've been in the field. It's been a while since I've been in church. This is officially my first public, public, what is it? Appearance. Thank you. Since I've had my son, so it is a pleasure to be with you all. When I spoke to your pastor, he called me at the time when I was writing and launching a program on my Facebook. And the program was inspired by the fact that Twitch, who heard about it? Twitch, that he took his own life. That was very sad. And the thing that hit me, usually I'm not a crier. You know, therapists, they teach us to handle things a certain way. The thing that really hit me is the fact that his suicide inspired me to look in the mirror, to see that everybody is dealing with mental health. And his passing pushed me to have this conversation so that other people who are probably ashamed, embarrassed, scared, that they too, they will find the courage to come out of the darkness and say that I, I am struggling. So we're going to try to learn as much as possible. We're not going to dwell on the sadness. In any and every situation, this is my pure belief. Whatever that happens to us in life, God has a light in there. It is up to us to connect to God so that He can reveal to us what is the light for our lives. So today I'm going to speak to you about mental health and wellness. I don't know if you picked up, but your sister is Haitian. So maybe if I pronounce something, you might miss it because, the nerves get to you. English is, we speak English very well, but sometimes when we're speaking it, the Creole shows up too. So just bear with me. This is a conversation for all. Sometimes I'm going to ask you to answer some questions for me so that we can remain engaged. This is not a Maureen conversation. This is a everybody conversation. Do we agree? We agree. So, what is our agenda for today? Are we here to talk just for talk? Twitch death was huge. But what happens 4 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks from now? What is it that we're going to do? Is the conversation going to stop? Or will it be ongoing? It's supposed to be ongoing. Thank you. I'm a little blind too. Praying. So the agenda for today is for us to introduce you to what is mental health. The primary goal for us today is to promote ongoing wellness. There is no way I can read that. Praise the Lord. What is mental health? Mental health consists of our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. So if you can think, you can feel, and act. Social, that is, in conclusion, our mental health. It also determines how we handle stress. How do we relate to each other and make choices? Mental health is important at every age of life, from childhood and adolescence through adulthood. I have a question for you all. How early do you think our mental health begins? How early? How early? In the womb? Okay. Anybody else? How early? Through my work, I've been working for an organization for the past year and a half. We have learned that mental health starts from zero. From the moment your child gets out of the womb, mental health, it begins. So for our youth, our young people, are you having trouble doing the things you like to do or the things that you need to do because of how you feel, like going to school, work, hanging out with friends? And for a person who just had a child, this applied to me too. Because as we know, one of the major aspects of mental health for women, especially those of us who have children, is what? Thank you. Postpartum depression. Huge factor. Personally, whenever I have a child, I am keeping myself in check. When I had my daughter, I smelled it coming. What do you mean you smelled it coming? Because I knew the signs, right? And so, when I started feeling certain feelings, when I realized, oh shoot, I'm struggling in this area, instead of denying what I was feeling, I said, self, we are struggling. And so, mom, I'm going to need some help. Husband, I need you to step up. And self, take a minute and love on yourself. So, like we said, the primary goal for us today is to promote ongoing wellness and to prevent mental health problems. Can mental health problems be avoided? Yes. Experts, the research have shown us that prevention is possible. Can our mental health affect our physical health? Yes. And one of the major aspects, in one of the major areas that it affects us physically, it causes a lot of people to have diabetes and high blood pressures. Those are medical issues where our mental health come into play. And let's not forget the fact that a lot of us are Caribbean, and the way that we eat, our seasonings, it's already against us. So when you add our mental health aspect and other aspects in life, it raises the numbers. Does our mental health affect only one group of people? Can Christian have mental health? Adventists. But do we admit it, though? It is a taboo. It's not okay. Because if we talk about mental health, that means we are crazy. So, can someone who have mental health issues have and live productive lives? Yes. And believe it or not, a lot of successful people have mental health concerns, okay? All right. So I have here some early signs, some early warning signs that we should be aware of when we're talking about mental health for ourselves, mental health for our loved ones, for our children, etc. Eating or sleeping too much or too little. Pulling away from people and usual activities. Having low energy or no energy. Feeling numb or like nothing matters. Having unexplained aches and pains. Feeling helpless or hopeless. Smoking, drinking, or using drugs more than usual. Feeling unusual confusion, forgetfulness, on edge, angry, upset, worried, etc. Now, church people, when we do these type of conversation, these types of presentations and having these types of conversation, we tell people, be careful. Just because someone is experiencing one of these things listed here does not automatically say or mean that they're having mental health issues. Do we have bad days? Is it okay to have bad days? Very normal. The problem is how long, the length of which those symptoms go on. So if for the past month you've been feeling like I can't do anything, I don't have the energy, I don't care about life, I just don't want to do it anymore. For a month, for weeks, or two months, 3 months consistently, you have a friend, your husband, a sister in the church, a pastor, an elder, it would be wise to say, I am concerned about you. I love you, and I notice you haven't been the same. Is everything okay? So now, church, as Adventists, as Christians, the most important thing is not for us to ask the question of, are you okay? But it's to create that safe space for the person to admit, no, I am not okay. And what happens when they admit they're not okay? We don't judge them. We don't push them away. We don't talk about it because we don't understand it. But we look for help. And we leave the conversation between A and B. If C cannot help, C has no business in the conversation. Agreed? Because one of the main issues people who have mental health problems have is lack of trust. If I cannot trust you, would I come to you? Will I tell you what's happening in my home if I can't trust you? Whether or not you're my pastor, you're my elder, I will not trust you. So we need, as a community, learn how to create a safe space so that our church members, our church people, our members can come and say, Pastor, you know what? I can't lead this month. I don't feel the same. And we need to be okay with that. All right? So some other signs when people are yelling or fighting with family and friends. So I know as a parent, sometimes it's hard when you have the little ones, right? You will catch yourself having little moments. But guess what? I have found, since I started working as a child parent psychotherapy therapist, that I've been very careful speaking to my daughter. Why? Because her mental health is as much my responsibility as it is my husband, as it is the environment for which we expose her. Example, self-disclosure. I'm a very short person, talk about it. My husband is 6'2". So, when my mental health put me in a position where I'm short. So when I'm talking to my husband, I feel the need to feel as tall too. Yeah? Ladies, admit it. We don't like to feel empowered. No, we don't. So my mental health one day, in conversation with my husband, I found myself doing the, no, you can't do that. I'm talking to you. Marcus, come on. My daughter was 18 months. What age did I say mental health start? My daughter was 18 months in her high chair, watching TV. And here I was talking to my husband, and he's sitting down. I'm standing up, so I feel so big. Now I'm tall, and I feel empowered. I'm one up to him. I'm speaking to him, expressing myself in the moment. He listened, and then after that, I looked at my daughter. I said, okay, girl, you better take it over there. A couple of weeks passed. I was talking to my daughter. Her name is Morelli. I said, Morelli, what are you doing? Morelli, come on. She was sitting in the high chair. She automatically stood up. And she started going, where did she learn it from? Her daddy. She learned it from me. So your actions, how you express yourself, how you carry yourself, your children are learning every day. So when your child is 17 years old, and now when you're talking to them, they are trying to be one up to you. The question is, where did they learn it from? When your child is trying to dominate the man in the house, the woman needs to ask herself the question, where and how did they learn that? So I went back to work as a therapist working with children from 0 to 5 years old. I shared that experience with my colleagues. And those of us who were parents, all of us said, I need to do better. Because if I don't do better now, that's the communication style, that's the mental health pattern I'm creating for my child. Okay? So, as we know, there are so many things the street, the church, people have said about mental health. We have the myths and we have the facts. One of the big myths that we have about mental health is that mental health problems don't affect me. I'm too good for that. No, I believe in the Lord Jesus Christ. So mental health does not affect me. Wrong. Because if you can think, you can feel, you can act, that's mental health. There is a huge difference between mental health and wellness and mental illness. What we tend to do is mesh everything together to make it seem like it's such a big negative thing. Okay, so the fact is, mental health problems are actually very common. In 2020, none of us will be shocked because we know what happened in 2020, right? 1 in 5, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1 out of the 5 experience a mental health issue. Think about it. So in your church, if you were to count how many people we have in the church, you would get your number. 1 in 6 young people experience a major depressive episode. Makes sense, because we couldn't hang out, we couldn't have fun, there was no going to the park, there was no hanging out. Everybody had to be with their family, whether we liked them or not. That was 2020. Really hard time. 1 in 20 Americans lived with a serious mental health illness, such as schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, or major depression. And what is killing us rapidly, church? Suicide. Suicide is a leading cause of death in the United States. In fact, it was the second leading cause of death for people ages 10 to 24. Think about it. So we have our young people, ages 10 to 24, dying rapidly because of mental health. It accounted for the loss of more 45,979 American lives in 2020. So suicide, so that means 45,979 Americans killed themselves in 2020. On top of coronavirus. So imagine how many people passed away in 2020. Can you imagine? Whew. American lives in 2020 nearly doubled the number of lives lost of homicide. Some of my Caribbean people have tendencies to say when these numbers present, well, I'm not American. Well, I have news for you. You live in America. So the numbers, they mean a lot for you as well because you are here. You live here. Your children are growing here. So you should be concerned, right? Another myth that we usually face is that children don't experience mental health problems. The fact is, even very young children may show early warning signs of mental health concerns, like I told you earlier. Another myth is that therapy and self help are a waste of time. Why bother when you can just take a pill? Or our Christian favorite one, why bother? It's a lack of faith. When you can pray about it, why do I need to see a therapist for? The funny thing is, when you have diabetes, it's not a problem to go see your doctor to get the medication to bring your blood sugar level down. Or when you have high blood pressure problem. However, when you are feeling emotionally unstable, it's a problem. You feel judged. People have an issue. It means your faith is not strong enough. You're not praying enough. Sister, what happens? You have the word. Jesus is coming. Yes. Do we believe in God? Yes. And is life hard? Yes. So mental health is happening to us every single day. Can mental health be prevented? Yes. The prevention of mental health includes of emotional and behavioral disorders, focuses on addressing non-risk factors such as trauma, exposure to trauma that can affect the chances that children, youth, or young adults will develop mental health problems. Promoting the social emotional well-being of children and youth leads to higher overall productivity, better educational outcomes, lower crime rates, stronger economies, lower healthcare costs, improved quality of life, increased lifespan, improved family life. So, parents, who are parents in this room? We can do better, right? Our being aware of our mental health means that we can do better. God is giving us the knowledge so that we can do better, so that we can save our children, right? When the Bible says, lead the children in the way so that when they grow up, they will not. If we give them the tools so they can feel strong, they can feel confident, will they leave the church? No. And if it so happens they have a mental health problems, they're going to go for the help, and then they will remain in church, and they will continue to live life as best that they can. But we need to give them the proper tools. Mental health and wellness. So, positive mental health allows people to realize their full potential, cope with the stresses of life, and their work productivity will be better. Do we know about the helps that are out there? There are a lot of help out there. There are a lot of organizations that provide services for mental health. Are they free? Not really. If you have Medicaid, you will definitely find organizations like Catholic Charities that they are big. They have some locations in Queens, some in Brooklyn. They are very good as far as helping people find the help that they need. Now, some of us are fearful because we might say, well, I'm Seventh-day Adventist. I don't feel comfortable speaking to a counselor that's not Christian. And that's okay. One of the things that we know about people going for help and getting the help is that the number of black therapists is very much lower comparing to the amount of white therapists that are available. So when you have the doctors that Pastor Carol presented here, who are willing to share information with you, the next question is, where's your office, sir? So if my child, if my friend, if my family member, or if I need to talk to somebody, where do I go? Is it fair? So, are we here just to talk the talk, people? Or are we going to walk the walk? We're here to talk, and we're here to walk. Because faith without work is... So just like sitting here, listening to the experts share and give you information and giving you some locations, some organizations that you can go to, just listening is not enough. And from this day forward, you and I, we have the responsibility to be better Christians, better people to the people that we meet and interact with on a daily basis. Is that all right? So, to conclude, as I was walking in, I received a call. A parent called my mom to say, can your daughter help? My child came home since Friday. She's been crying. I don't know what to do. She feels like she doesn't fit in. She doesn't have friends. Nobody likes her. What do I do? Please ask your child, ask your daughter to help me. And I was walking in here. I said, oh God, well, your timing is funny. But that parent is doing something that a lot of us are fearful of till this day. She is asking for help. Now, while I was on the phone with my mom, I didn't have the answer. I said, let me call you back because I'm walking into a presentation. I need to call back. But those are the type of dilemmas that our children are facing on a daily basis. Some of us, when I was growing up in Haiti, they used to tell us, what problems do you have? You don't have any bills. You're just a child. Just go to school and that's it. What are you complaining for? Well, let me tell you, in America, your children, and even back home, they have a lot of problems. There's a lot of things happening in school. And if our children, when they don't feel like they belong, they resound to suicide. Brothers and sisters, this conversation has to keep going. We don't want to lose any one of our kids. We want to do better. And just because you are asking for help doesn't mean that you are a bad parent, or that you are weak, or that your faith is not strong enough. In fact, the fact that you are asking for help means that you recognize, Father, 1, I am still human. 2, I need you and I depend on you. 3, please send me to the right place where I can have my needs met. So I hope when you leave this place, after this conversation, you will remember to ask for help. If it's with your children, ask for help. If it's your husband, ask for help. Because sometimes you wish there was a husband care. Hallelujah. Yes. So whatever that you need help with, brothers, sisters, ask for help. Your mental health is a major priority. If you don't take care of your mental health, nothing else in life will work properly. Understood? Your worship will not be true if your mental health is not up there. Take care of your mental health. You matter. You are worth it. You are worthy. So please, don't act like Twitch, who felt helpless, probably, hopeless. But remember to ask for help. Is that okay? All right. Thank you so much. And I will see you guys again.
All right. Thank you, Mrs. Morrow. And at this time, okay, so I can't wait to hear from Dr. Powell, who has been patiently waiting on Zoom. But before I do so, I'm going to call our panelists to come to assume the position. And Ms. Morrow, who presented, if you can do so as well. Okay, if we can work our cameras. This is Miss King. Miss King. Okay, the lady. All right, this is Miss King, Sherry-Ann King, who is a social service professional correctional counselor with the New York City Department of Correction, Rikers Island. Miss King speaks to the inmates at Rikers Island. We have okay. We have a doctor. We have Dr. Thomas, who he is an expert in healthcare law, and Dr. Thomas will certainly speak to us today. We'll hear from him. I am yours truly, the pastor of Waymark Ministries, your humble servant, and I will be your host for this afternoon. Before we hear from any of our other panelists, I would like to for us to hear from Dr. Powell. Dr. Powell, we're so grateful for your. He dropped out. Okay, all right. All right, so the other individual couldn't be here this afternoon. Mr. Clement Louisy couldn't be here this afternoon, circumstances beyond his control. So we want to say thank you to Mrs. Morrow Jean for her presentation. And one of the things that I took from, she reiterated in her closing remarks is don't be afraid to ask for help. And I also heard, in a presentation that mental health could be taboo. People don't want to identify. If you could assist me with the mics for our panelists, we need two. We need one more. We have one here. Thank you, young. Okay, so we have a situation, and essentially, it's like this has brought us here today because we have, among other incidences that we have encountered, whether close family or community-based, country-based, or just someone who we knew on television. Personality, a celebrity, and battling depression and resorting to suicide and whatnot. Stephen Boss, Twitch, his character name, and a DJ from the Ellen DeGeneres show who we saw so much life in it. And for those of you who don't know, who did not know Stephen, um, he was a DJ. He came second runner up individual dancer, on this popular show, Dancing with the Star, and so you think you can dance? Sorry, I was thinking of the wife. Um, so you think you can dance? Um, Dancing associated, people who dance a lot associated with, a personality who's happy. It's almost like you can dance your problem away and whatnot. And his smile, his accomplishment and whatnot. I think other than getting into the depth of other things that we will be talking about this afternoon, I can't get it out of my mind, trying to reconcile someone with so much to live for would feel hopeless. And I just, there's the reason why I brought you here today, so that we can have a talk. And that's why I said, let's have a talk about the situation. So I want to start with you, Dr. Thomas. How do you make sense out of, such an ordeal, coupled with your experience of what you have observed with life, and, how do you make sense out of this in light of what we're talking about today?
Well, thank you, Pastor Daniel, coordinator, and thank you to my other co-panelists. I think it is a situation that is extraordinary and sad at the same time. I will start my comment by saying it is very important that those of us who look up to celebrities and actors on television, young people in particular who follow these celebrities, these YouTubers, and these people who present a lifestyle that on the surface is seemingly the goal for all young person to aspire to. There is certainly a lot beneath the carpet that is not being revealed. And again, we'll talk about that a little more, but let me begin from a legal standpoint to say that in as much as we believe that mental health is in fact an important aspect of our holistic health undertaking, there is not enough from a federal, state, and local standpoint with respect to the attention, the resources that are allocated to this problem. There is a huge disparity between the law and mental health. See, and in your field, I'm sure that you've been, and we'll hear from the psychiatrist or psychologist in a minute with respect to the work that he has done relative to addressing those issues with respect to the legal aspect of those things. You cannot, on a national level, place emphasis on the something that is so important, that is so prevalent, and yet to have such a disconnect legally, make it so difficult to recognize this from a legal standpoint. From a clinical standpoint, you're saying, yes, it is there. We must identify it, but when you get to the legal bridge, there is in fact a bridge that is disconnected. And so, to go back to the question that was asked specifically, I think that it's important for us to recognize that it is not all that is gold or that is glitter, that is gold. And particularly to my young people, I have a burning desire to let our young people know that there is more to aspire to than what we see that is so materialistic. And that affects the mental health in a way. And I'm sure, again, those persons who work with them on a daily basis will attest to that. it is really not what it seems. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Thomas. And we're just going to turn over to Mrs. King, as you know, she weighs in on the subject matter. Miss King, sorry.
I'm glad you mentioned the resources. From my standpoint, I'm more of like the umbrella of services for the inmates and detainees. And most of the times that quick fix is not available. The resources that, that you would hope that they would get, whether it's just, going to the dental or clinical or so forth, there is always something that's, no, you can't do it right now. Or we don't have an officer to walk you over, or just the simple things, that quick fix that could solve a lot of the issues, the immediate issues, they're just not available. And for my part, the resources that are available to me to refer them to services, they're just not there. But yeah.
One of the challenges that we have is, the stigma that is attached to mental illness. And you've had celebrities over the years who have made a deliberate move or effort to kind of remove some of the negative tag in relation to some of those things. People might say that, hey, I'm suffering with mental illness. You have Kanye West, who claim mental illness. Arguably, it is what it is. And you have others who are saying that they're suffering for such and such. And it's real. What advice do we have for church members who recognize that at times they struggle, and they could possibly be high functional, so they function, yes, but they struggle with their thoughts, they struggle with depression, they struggle with the basic things in life. Even if they are functioning, they send the children to school, they are working or whatnot, they themselves can tell that everything is not what it's supposed to be. So, Mrs. Jean, can you speak to the whole aspect of church and the stigma in relation to admitting that you want to go seek intervention?
Sure. Thank you, Pastor. I think one of the main aspects of when it comes to talking about the stigmas or acknowledging, this is the Creole. Yeah. So, whatever reason, whenever I'm a little nervous, it happens. Yeah. So, when we're talking about the stigmas, I agree with my colleague here who said the disparities are so huge, and it continues to be a huge issue whenever we're talking about mental health and the stigmas, and it applies to church members, because naturally in the church we do not have a culture, or we don't have specific departments that allows us or the people to feel comfortable to come and seek the help, right? So in church, we have our own stigmas when it comes to mental health. So to start with, I would say church needs to normalize. We need to normalize the conversation. Let it be an ongoing conversation, because as we know that Adventists, we promote health and wellness. But for whatever reason, when we look in health and wellness, mental health is not as big of an aspect. So for us, we need to normalize the conversation so that it can be an ongoing conversation for our church members, and so that when it's happening to one of us, have a department. Hello, somebody? Have somebody, because in the church, if you look in the church, you will find someone who went to school for mental health, psychology, psychiatry. Somebody is in there. Let us use our resources, the ones that we have, so that we can start educating people. I believe for me personally in my community, that's how it will start, and that's how we're going to make the difference.
Wonderful, well said. Um, Going back to college days when we had assignments and stuff like that, um, you wouldn't get your papers done until you said, I'm stressed, I'm depressed. You know, that seemed to be the word to get you started, you know, get you charged as if that was the catalyst. I'm depressed. What are the signs of depression? How does one know that he is depressed? You know, how would we know? Question to the panel. Each one of you can speak to it. We want to start with Miss King first, and then we're going to go to Doc.
When you're not doing the things that you usually do, you just completely stop. You're withdrawn, or not even like your tone towards others. It just completely change. Those are some.
And again, and you say that I've undertaken some academic work that truly has brought me to the borderline of insanity. um, you know, I have had days, and I could tell you, were it not for the Lord. And I think we're going to come to that in a minute, and I don't want to minimize at all in that conversation the importance of really having a connection to God. And I know that we're in a church setting, and even if I were on Oprah Winfrey show, that I would bring that into, because this is what that has really allowed me to surpass, and I have to say surpass, because I had to jump some things that I didn't know how it happened. There are moments, and I am I consider myself a very neat person. I'm clean. I have this thing about things not being in order. They say, and my wife tells me that all the time, I'm OCD. It's not just an OCD. I grew up in a household where my mom would come home and she would just begin to drag her foot on the non-carpeted floorboard. And you would hear the sand, I don't know what it is, whether she brought it or if we walk with our shoes in, and that's not something that you had to do. And so that is something that was instilled in me. And so when you begin to see, and there are days, Pastor Daniel, I would be up. And I know I had some really, really, and I don't drink, coffee, and I don't do the high caffeine drinks either. So I was doing some double nights. You're talking about 2 24-hour cycles. And, especially when you've had, the last program that I did was, a PhD. When you've completed the coursework and you have done the research and committees are sending back your material and making you feel that the 6 years that you've put in so far is insufficient. And they put the red pen to tell you, they don't tell you what to resubmit, they just tell you, resubmit this. And, there are days when you just cry, and you look around, you wake up in the morning and you see, but the house, I'm smelling something, but I don't know, it cannot be my house because in my mind it's clean, but my eyes is telling me something different. That tells you that you are depressed. You're on the borderline of depression. And it's not only working for at that particular level. It's the same way minimized for our children. And, Ms. Jean said something in her presentation that is so absolutely correct. And we have to pay attention to these things. It's not just, these are just children. And this is what my family used to say. And I think some of them still say it. And I don't think they say it because they didn't know. It's just really ignorance. You don't work. You don't have to work. You don't have to do anything. What could possibly stress you? Well, the schoolwork. Have you guys seen some of the school packets that your children come home with? I have friends who call me and says, could you just assist? Because I have gone through. I have a master's degree. This is what the parents are saying to me. And I don't understand third grade math.
Right.
That's a stressful. So depression comes in a variety of ways. I'm not going to take the place of the expert who has actually studied this, but I could tell you, even from experience, those are the signs. You could differentiate between when you're truly depressed and when you're just having a rough day. If it rise to those levels that I have discussed, I think they're showing signs of depression.
Wow. Thank you for that. I could certainly relate to, these assignments, um, even in the kindergarten stage. Somehow, school assignments for kids are now parents' assignments. But I'm going to ask a question following this, but it's interesting you mentioned that because do we really believe that those little kids, are depressed or they go experience depression and those things? Um, you know, how am I supposed to look at that as a Caribbean parent when your sole responsibility is to go to school while I'm going to work? And essentially, this is what you're saying. And so maybe at an early age, our children don't learn coping mechanism. We don't talk to them and teach them self-talk and affirm them, and they quit and some of the problems that we are faced with. Ms. John, next question is to you. You can speak to that if you like, but I want to ask you a question to deepen the discussion more because of the interest of time. We have so much ground to cover. How do you know? And I want to play on the words here. How do you know when the edge is near? How do you know when the end is near? How do you know when the edge is near? Like you are bordering, kicking the bucket kind of thing. You want to call it quit. Maybe not to the point of suicide. We're going to nail it. But I want to destroy everything in the house. I want to punch the wall. I want to destroy the door, a teenager, to my room. I want to break the dishes. I want to break the TV. How do you know that the edge is near?
Whew. That is a very, very deep question. The approach I want to take with it is for us to begin to be trauma informed. That's a major work. I'm even pursuing to further my studies in trauma informed therapy, because what we found is that our past speaks a lot to how we are in the present. So the traumas that we were exposed to, the things that we felt that were silent when we were children, are being triggered on a regular basis. How many of us have heard the word trigger on social media? A lot of people are hearing or using the word trigger, and sometimes it's even being used to make jokes and being funny. However, when you are consistently being triggered by your environment, you need to stop and ask yourself, what is going on with me? Now, to be fair, you will not have the answer in the moment. So when you are, like I said, consistently being triggered, so your husband could be your trigger, your friends could be your trigger, your job could be your trigger. Let me make it more clear for you. I was having a discussion with a colleague, right? And during the conversation, I realized he was triggering me because I am a child who was raised by powerful men, who was very self-sufficient, is very self-sufficient, very confident in himself, but who made me feel small when I was a child. So during the conversation with that colleague, the thing that he said to me automatically triggered me, and my tone changed. My response became defensive because I was triggered. So that's a key aspect that you can use. Pay attention to what the things that are triggering you on a regular basis. see how you react to them and how they continue to impact your life on a regular basis. If they are taking from you, such as your willingness to hang out, your willingness to do things that make you happy, the things that make you feel you, then you have to realize that something is off and that, quote unquote, you are going down. Your mental health is being affected, and that's a major red flag for you. So your triggers, your how do you respond? How are they impacting you on a regular basis? And your reaction. Clear?
Thank you. Go ahead, Don. Oh, okay. Yeah, sorry. All right. Well, thank you, Miss Jean. Let's talk, about dealing with hurt. I'm trying to see how many areas we can cover as quick as possible, because as a church population, as a church group, we are affected in one way or the other. And not only do we have suicide in our community, thank God, I don't know of anyone in church who had gotten to that point. It's almost like everyone on the outside. It tells me that people in church still have hope, but I am not naive to believe that we are immune. We are not. It could happen. But let's talk about dealing with hurt. It's as it is, people get hurt by family members, by co-workers, by church members, by someone in authority, betrayal and stuff like that. Dealing with hurt. How can you cope? How do you develop coping mechanism, and how do you deal with hurt? Anyone could go first.
Well, and that's again, particularly when we talk from the Caribbean perspective, we tend to. I grew up, sadly, and in some instances I might say it to myself, but thankfully, without a male figure in my life, single parent. And a lot of the discipline that I happen to have received had been at the hands of females, because I have 5 sisters. I'm just the son, and twin. I'm the last, and so I felt not abused, but what I perceived to have been overly disciplined. And that triggered something in me, that I had a rebellious sort of disposition to female authority. And not that I was, I felt macho in myself. But again, these things, and I did not realize those things until my learning, my, various exposures to various types of, mental focus, and recapping on the things that have, brought me to the point in my life where I am. I was not able to identify, that. And so I had to deal with it, because again, whether it is to my teachers, who happen in the Caribbean to be mostly females, so I had this rebellious disposition towards female authorities. And we could never identify what it was. Because again, in those small Caribbean island where I grew up, we don't have that kind of available presence of counselors. I don't even think we had counselors in the school. If you were to send to the office, it was to get a beating. So I would make sure if I were to get a beating in the office, I would get a beating for a reason. So that heightened the level of antagonism that I had towards female. And it triggered beyond that. So my first set of, jobs where females were my superiors. Again, I went through jobs and I couldn't understand. So I ended up, and it's something that we don't talk about, but I ended up, again, understanding that I had a problem. So I went to a psychiatrist. And I just didn't, understand. I didn't think at the time I was crazy. I just thought that and I never told anyone, because the very first thing that they would say to you, and I told my family members about what I was thinking, and you know what the response was? And again, Caribbean people pay attention. They told me that I'm studying too much, that is going to make me go crazy. And so really this is what it was, so say top study, you can study, this thing is going to make you go crazy. And so it is so, and again, it goes back to my mom. And the way, which is again so important, because the issue was with female figures in my life. And the only person I could turn to is another female figure, not just a female figure, a female authority, that I could not say anything that I wanted to. I didn't grow up telling my mother things that I would share with my friends, which is sad. And I have a daughter, and I don't want to, veer off, but this is important, the way we interact with our children. And I'm learning from now, my little girl, my little precious, you know how I talk about it, and I just light up, that I will hope that I could be at a place where she could tell daddy any and everything that she wants or she needs to. I will encourage that. I will create the avenue for that, whether it is boyfriends, especially boyfriends. Especially boyfriends. Because I just got a mag. No, that's it's but going back to the coping mechanism, the way that I was able to, and again, that was as a young adult. At the time that I recognized it, I was 23 years old. Okay? And again, there was a rebellious thing, because at the time you're trying to figure out, well, why did my father leave me at 3 days old from the hospital, sickly born, twin, with a mother who didn't have anywhere to turn? Okay? Went through all of that and tried to get, and again, those things I was trying to search for it. And one of the coping mechanism that was recommended to me is spend time, and I had to go back to now talking to my sisters and the times when they were beating me and I didn't understand why. Okay? Going back to uncover that trauma. Okay? Having to face it and deal with it. But something called, revisitation. I don't know whether you do that in your field, but to revisit the trauma, not in a way to antagonize the hurt that is inside, but a way to understand it so that you could move forward better. And now I have every respect for every female. I love the females in my life, and I could say thank God, because I reflect back on it again. All the direction that I had gotten, they were from women. And these are women that I was being antagonistic toward simply because what I thought in the discipline was hurt to me.
All right. Audience, you have been patient. Thank you, Doc. And I want to engage you. So get ready with your question. Get your mic. We have a few more minutes just to make sure we cover ground. So question in relation to dealing with hurt, depression, mental health, and suicide. While you are getting ready to ask your question, and also on Zoom, feel free to unmute your mic and raise your hand. We are going to acknowledge you, and feel free to ask your question and engage. So one more question as you get ready to our panelists, and get ready, get the mic so that we can keep rolling. We spoke about mental health. We spoke about depression. I asked the question, how do you know that the edge is near? And all this will speak to, also dealing with hurt, all this will speak to anger management. Anger management. The way that men used to deal with issues before, the way that brothers used to, square out, and settle the score with fist, not with guns and knife. Our society is different now. In St. Lucia, I always make reference to St. Lucia. That's where most of us are from, and that's where, most of my information would be from. Killing almost every week. I don't want to say every day, but it's close. Every week, settling the matter, gun violence and whatnot. Are we immune to that in church? How do we how do we manage our anger? In the Bible says, be angry but sin not. All right? And sometimes anger may not manifest itself into a physical fist fight, but you might be angry. All right? You might be angry and, you deal with a brother or sister in a way that will cause more hurt. You are angry and you will not humble yourself. How do I manage my anger in a way that will not get the better of me or the best of me? I want to take just a couple seconds, and then we're going to go to our audience. Ms. King, you want to go ahead?
It's important to know what our triggers are, what would get us to the point of being so angry, having such an outburst. Whether it be our environment, whether it be, the people that we're surrounded with, our mother, our fathers, our sister, brother, or even our workplace, knowing what triggers. Maybe they say something that just ticks me off, And once you know that trigger, you should be able to develop, skills or techniques so that when it comes to that point, I will not get to that point where I am showing my true self or, in such a manner.
I would say that, for example, when in the moment when something happens, let's be honest, you're gonna get angry at some point about something, right? It's not a sin, the pastor just quote from the Bible, to be angry, right? But it is how we express the anger that can become sinful. So when there is a pastor that I've been following a lot lately, he says, when I'm angry, I'm quiet. So church members, if you see me quiet, committee members, if I'm quiet, know that your pastor is angry. That's a coping mechanism. And that's good for him, that he has the courage to say, when I'm angry, I don't speak. I need a moment to think, to pause, and to reboot and come back. So for most of us, when we get angry, we don't have that coping mechanism. Because when we're growing up, we were not giving the proper tool of how to express our anger. Because like many of us have said, were we allowed to be angry as children? No. We were not allowed to be angry as children because what problems do you have? So now as adults, we have to choose. And I salute you, doctor, for having the courage to realize something is not right. I need to go back. I need to do the work. A lot of us, what we need to do is do our own work. Sometimes we're busy doing the work for our kids, our spouse, our family members, and we forget us. We have to do the work for the individual and know that, yes, I got angry. I might need to take 30 minutes, an hour Now that I'm a mom, I go hide in the bathroom. Yeah, that's my coping mechanism so that I can rewind, reboost, and come back. So my children, they don't have to see that ugly thing some of us saw when they were growing up. So coping mechanism is different for different people, and there is no one rule when it comes to that, but it is good to find the one thing that worked for you.
All right.
And I just very quickly in there too, and the point that you made reference that, and brethren, it is so important that these things, attention, is paid to these things, and just reflecting back, not only did this thing address a problem that I had, but it finding the root of it and addressing it made me a better person in the relationships that I was having. See, I used to get close to females, have great relationships, great, and then when this thing comes up, either it was something that, something that was triggering, and all of a sudden I pushed back, because if I push forward, it was going to go back to my rebellious nature, so I pushed back. And by pushing back, I just created a blockade, a wall. So it is so important that we not just, identify or deal with the anger, but it is important to openly talk about it. That is a problem with we are like sheep, Caribbean men, and I say that because it's a particular. I think I find it particularly associated to us Caribbeans, because these are the people that I know best, in that we like to just shut things up. We don't talk about it, and we feel if we do, then it minimizes our position either in a relationship, in the family, and it makes us appear weak, and that is not the case. So I think we need to have more. And going back to the church, the fact that we don't see necessarily a high rate of suicide in the church does not necessarily mean that there are not mental issues in the church. I think we have some, if the truth be told, we have some demon-possessed among us, and we are not dealing with it because, again, it is in a church setting, so everybody is going to just simply have to pray about it. But there is something, and I hope we get an opportunity, not only dealing with the scientific approach to this issue, but we have to look at the spiritual as well, so that we could properly identify what these problems are and how to properly address them, and not think that you are in church. I have read many places in the Bible where men of acclaim, you remember Elisha? Man has done so great things for the Lord, and then he was experiencing suicidal ideation. Lord, he doesn't want to do it himself. And so it's like us in the church. I'm not going to take a gun and whatnot, but man, could somebody take me out? And that's a very, very serious, it's like taboo in the church, because we don't discuss it, we don't talk about it, and we believe that if it is in church, then it should not be there. And that's a problem.
Well said. All right, I want to turn over to the audience. If you have a question, we are going to entertain now. So we have one in-house, and don't forget to raise your hand on Zoom. If not, just type in the chat. If you don't know how to use the hand raise button, just type, put a question mark in the chat, and we will acknowledge you. In-house, we're getting ready for the in-house. Mr. Bailey.
The first presenter, I can't remember her name, but you made a statement that's troubling to me, and I mean deeply. You made a statement that is troubling to me. Um, you mentioned that when one is oversleeping, always sleeping, it's a form of mental illness. That's troubling. Now I'll tell you why. I don't mean to play. I sleep in all the time. I sleep standing. I sleep driving. I sleep talking. I sleep all the time. That's one problem I don't have. I'm always sleeping. Part of my reason for making sleeping a habit, I usually, when I'm dealing with a problem, I sleep it out. So I'm always sleeping. I'm in traffic, sleeping. So tell me what is going on here?
Okay. Um, so thank you for the question. When we were talking about early signs of mental health, I gave a list and I went back and said this is not exclusive. It does not mean automatically that you have a mental health problem. But my brother, you said when I have a problem, I sleep it off. It doesn't mean the tendency, what we're trying to do here today is to remove the negative stigmas of mental health and to normalize the conversation, right? So if we are sleeping off our problems, are we facing our problems? Because when we wake up, isn't the problem still there? So what we are saying is those are signs. It's not exclusive. It doesn't mean that automatically as a practitioner, I have the right to say that you have a mental health problem. That is not how diagnoses work. It's a process when it comes to diagnosing. However, it could be an indicator that there is a problem that your mental health here, you need to take better care of it, right? Some people, when that sleep off their problems, they probably need to move a little more. They probably need to exercise. And that could be a way for you to address that. But I'm not saying that you have a mental health problem. I'm saying that mental health, when we are looking at some consistent indicators that tell us that this person or those people experience mental health problems, that this is one of those, things. But if that's your everyday thing, this is the way that this brother is, it may not apply to you. But if it's not the way for this sister, she's always on her feet, always moving, and all of a sudden she's sleeping off, falling asleep wherever she is, always tired, then it could be an indicator.
Thank you very much. We are going to go Zoom and then we're going to come back in house. Sister Loretta, then Brother Elijah in house, and then Brother Lester Zoom. Go ahead, Sister Loretta.
Good evening, brothers and sisters. I have two questions. Sorry about my voice. It's kind of going. My first question is, what is the difference between push to the edge and push to the limit? And my second question is, what are the signs that you headed for a nervous breakdown?
Very, very good questions. I would like to believe that push to the edge and the limit is essentially interchangeably the same. If you are pushed to the edge, it means that you are close to the point of drop. And pushed to the limit, it means that beyond that there is not much wiggle room. And you know, and essentially that's what we're talking about today. What push, what trigger you to be pushed to the edge or your limit? What are your coping mechanisms? What do you use to manage You know, and essentially before we end, we're going to give some tips in relation to self-care, how to ensure that you develop good coping mechanisms so that when you at almost your wit ends and you are pushed to the edge or your limit where you feel like you're gonna suffer a nervous breakdown because you are now so depressed about the situation, you are angry about a situation that doesn't change. So push to the edge and limit, the same. And the other question that she has is, if can you, any one of you respond to that?
Can you please repeat it
The
for
second
me?
one.
The second part.
I asked, what are the signs that you're headed for a nervous breakdown?
Okay. So a lot of times we find that what is consistent with nervous breakdown is anxiety, right? A lot of people who struggle with anxiety disorders or panic attacks, there are a lot of nuances when it comes to mental health and how we use those words. Sometimes, most times, when someone says, I'm having a nervous breakdown, when they actually see a professional, we see that it was something different. And also, a lot of times, what we see, because the words are used so often, it becomes part of the of the culture. So now people are saying, I'm having panic attacks. So when you're having a nervous breakdown, there are many variations of things that could tell you you're having a panic attack or a nervous breakdown. Can you function? Your heart, your palpitation. You will see that you might start breathing very heavily. Your heart might start beating very heavily. You will find that you may not be able to think thoroughly. So there are a lot of things that you will experience physically that will tell you, oh, I am, what you asked, being pushed to the edge, or have reached my limit here. So for so many people, what we say is you have to see a professional. The professional will help you by giving you the coping skills, some mechanism, or even medication for some people to help them with that disorder. But it's a major nuance out here with the nervous breakdown, panic attacks, and how we use it in daily, conversation and in our culture. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, we're gonna come quickly in house, and then we'll go back to Brother Lester. Go ahead.
Okay, my question is very informative discussion, by the way. Um, is there a relation between mental health issues and homelessness? And recently, the Mayor Adams, I believe he rolled out a program for homeless people, right? They will be literally arresting homeless people and checking them into mental institutions, that kind of a thing. Can you speak to that issue, and is it something that is, there's a word I'm looking for. Huh? Is ethical, right, legal to do something of that nature? That's my question.
Okay. I worked in the psychiatric ward, and one of the things that we saw consistently is, yes, there tends to be a correlation between mental health, mental illness, and homelessness, especially amongst what we call BI, POC, Black, Indigenous, I forgot the rest, people. So basically colored people. What we see that amongst colored people, Black, Indigenous people, Hispanic, etc., we see that there is a consistency when it comes to the relations with mental illness and and homelessness. So why is that? Because your mental health, mental illness affect your ability to work, your ability to have a productive life, your ability to be self-sufficient human beings. So when you start having mental problems, when a person is diagnosed, if they don't have the support, they don't have a safety net, they don't have the resources within their community, there is a tie between their mental illness and homelessness. So if we were to pick 100 people in New York City right now, we would be able to pick them up, because go to the junction alone, we would have a few, right? We would find, if we were to do a survey, we would find that about 90% of those people have mental illness. So in the psych ward, we saw that consistently, right? People who were coming in that had mental illness, and when you ask them, when you leave here, where do you go? They don't have a home. And some of them are picked up by police officers. Some of them, when they leave the hospital, they are going in jail. So there is a consistent correlation there.
So if I could, and that's, absolutely correct in that there is, and there are studies that show that there is a correlation between, mental, disease and homelessness. In fact, some of the reasons, the majority of the reasons why people actually end up on the street is because they have had some kind of mental breakdown or mental disease. Speaking to the issue of the legal aspect, or both legal and ethical, to the mayor's recent decision, it's a policy decision. There's always a dynamic between what is policy from the perspective of the government, whether it is at a state level, whether it is at a city level, as in the case of New York, or the federal level. There's a dynamic between the policy and one, ethical. The ethics of that is really whether that is right. And lingering in onto from the ethical is going to be always the legal. And there's going to be some legal challenges to it, because in as much as the spirit of what the mayor is endeavoring to do is consistent with what is perceived to be good public policy, but there is a shift, there is a step over into one, ethics, because you do have individual, rights and responsibilities that must be protected, as well as constitutional rights. Even the people who are on the streets, you want to remove them, but they do have every single rights afforded under the Constitution. A right to remain in their person. You cannot force someone off the street. You have to do it in a way that is, one, consistent with the constitutional rights that they do have, and secondly, the ethical standards that must be, and I want to speak something very quickly on that. Just permit me to get on this, because there might be instances where, and we have seen that a lot, there are families who, after the fact, I'm talking about when there is a suicide, wants to blame the therapist who didn't diagnose properly. They want to, they have, called, and, they released my mother from the hospital, and when, they did that, boom, they went home, and they hung themselves, they found home. I'm suing the hospital, I'm suing this and whatnot. Liability is a very interesting thing to prove in law, especially in that particular context, okay? There's always 4 prongs that must be, and again, we're talking about, earlier on, some of the list of things that you mentioned that were prevalent in someone who is likely demonstrating or displaying signs of mental illness, and you went through a list. You could say in that particular context, well, it's a list of those, either one or a combination of, in the law it's different. If the law says there are 4 prongs, every single one of them must be met, and there's a burden to meet that. Very quickly, if you're going to say, well, it's the therapist that caused that, and we want to sue the hospital, and New York and the United States is a very litigious country. That's, everybody wants to sue everybody for anything. But there are 4 prongs. I'm going to go through this very quickly, and again, that may benefit you in your work. First, you have to establish, and again, going back to the issue of homelessness. If the person was just picked up on the street and taken to a hospital or to see a therapist, was there a patient, doctor, or therapist relationship That has to be established. And the Lord defines how that is established. It's not just a matter of you pick somebody up from the street and say, clean that person up because we're going to take this person to, a hotel room or whatnot. Okay? So that's the first. The second one is if there had to be, and there had to be a relationship that exists, a doctor-patient relationship or a doctor-therapist relationship, number one. Number two, did that doctor have a standard of care to prescribe to that patient? Okay? In your field, there is a standard of care. There is a standard, ethical standard. There is a standard of care that must be met. It cannot fall below that standard of care. Okay? And again, we could go into the dynamics of it and the details of it. That's, beyond the scope of what we're discussing here. Number three, if in fact that standard of care was met, okay, or if in fact there was a standard of care, did that standard of care, or was that standard of care met, or was the care that was presented, did it fall below that standard of care? And fourthly, if in fact it did fall below, was that directly, and we talk about correlation again, was the damage to that patient directly as a result of the failure of that particular care of omission? And all four of those would have to be present. Going back very quickly again, and I know that it's something that we don't hear talk a lot about, talking about, and you work with corrections, and you may have seen a lot of people who the law do not perceive to be mentally ill because of crimes that they have committed, because there's a very narrow standard that has to be met. The law has to say, in the moment that you could be as crazy as you are, in the moment that you committed the crime, and this is what the specialists are going to find out, was in fact, okay, did he in fact at the moment of committing the crime suffer a mental illness that caused him to do so? It's not what he was before or after in that particular, and it's very, very difficult. There's a high burden on it, and these are things that we ought to be cognizant about and understand, so that when we talk about mental health, it does not just affect, somebody who's walking on the street crazy, okay? It talks about all of those things that we have, addressed here. But yes, I went a little, overboard, but when I talk about law and religion, I'm a little bit it's exciting to me, but that's fine.
All right. Thank you. We'll answer, we'll take one more question, and then we'll have our closing remarks and in relation to this subject. And I did say in my preamble that we will not be able to exhaust, the subject matter or the various, subtopics that we have in relation to mental health and some of the social issues that we encounter. But Stephen Boss brought us to the table, and also of a couple episodes of suicide and, helplessness, hopelessness that people are experiencing, brought us to the table. And I'm hoping that we could have part two to this, because I'm pretty sure we haven't even, touched, not even the surface. This is just, scratch level. Brother Lester, before we engage, the panel in closing remarks. Brother Lester, your question?
Yeah, good evening to everyone. My question is, what role does proper nutrition and exercise do to, ward off the, let's say on the feeling of getting depressed and stuff like that?
Wonderful. That's a good question. And if I may say that diet has a lot to do with, with our health, holistic. How we take care of our bodies, which is fuel to, our physical being. And, I would say that although I don't have research in my presence to quote to you, to make reference to, I would like to say that, proper dieting will play, a vital role in your well-being. And I'm pretty sure that it will help with your mental state, your physical state, and mental state. I think as an Adventist, we promote Newstat, which we speak to the nutrition, and we speak to other aspect of including air, water, exercise, sunlight, to be temperate, how you take care of your body and stuff like that. And this has proven to work well. For somebody who gets up and exercise, they will be in a better mental space to be able to cope. Somebody who eats properly, have the necessary nutrients, be able to cope. And poor health, and it would be an interesting study to see whether or not people who are in low socioeconomic status in relation to how they eat, how it affects them mentally, and to be able to make decisions. I know when I was going to school, I wasn't want to have breakfast, and that affected me so much so that now that I have my daughter, even if she doesn't eat anything for the day, I make sure that she has breakfast. I remember when we were standing in assembly early in the morning with that, standing in assembly listening, I fainted. And I'm sure it's not because I was exhausted from, standing, but because I did not have breakfast. I would have been able to stand. And so it is vital. It is vital. I'm still not a foodie. I'm not big on food. Listen, essentially the Holy Spirit reminded me again today. Because I did not have breakfast, I went in my vehicle early on before I preach, and I went for one of my daughter's box juice, and I drank it, and I think I had apricot, the dry one, and I ate, and that's why I was able to preach for an hour, or else it would have been half an hour I was preaching today. So I felt I wasn't going to preach unless I went for some sugar, and that's because the wife offered me breakfast, and I said I'm gonna pass this morning. And so, Brother Lester, food is important, is essential. If you don't eat properly, you're not going to be, fuel. You're not going to be healthy, and it will affect, your mental health. All right. I'm going to take you quickly, and then I'm going to ask for the closing remarks. But before I take you, I want to say for our closing remarks, I want somebody to speak quickly too. I'm excited. I have everything going for me. I'm laughing, I'm smiling, I'm dancing. I have a house, I live Beverly Hills or whatever. But at the back of my mind, I don't want to be here anymore. What could have possibly led me to that point, and how to take care of myself so that I don't get to the point of what Twitch did. So think of that for your closing remarks. Let me go to my sister, which will be the final question for tonight. Go ahead, my dear sis.
Hello, panel. I would like to direct my question to Dr. Dan. You spoke about going and seek out help when you thought that they were a problem. And it's a very great thing to do when we know that something is wrong with us. And I would like to say that I commend you with that, seeking out help, because many times as paraprofessionals, as clergy of the church, many times the pastors, the elders, the deacon, and everyone don't seek no help. So how broken people can help broken people, or hurt people within the church when we were not taught these aspects of cope mechanism within the church. And I know you're going to get to that point, but you talk about something I always said, Pastor, that generational curses, bloodline curses, and ancestral curses have a lot to do with us in the church. And if we do not have it within the church, then we are dead from the outside. Then we have to take Twitch to come to the church and make him a head factor of learning within the church, okay? And I can tell you, I deal with lots of mental illness every single day. And it's a very harsh thing because many times there is no medication for that. It's beyond the help. And like my sister Sherry Ann said, there is a factor even in her organization. There is no medication for even going to the in-house doctor to help them. And my sister Maureen, you said that you have learned how to cope. Many people don't know. So we like to learn this on another part, that the church would learn how to cope as children of God, as people who teaches others about God. Sometimes we don't know, so hurt people, and because we don't know, there's a big hurt within the church. Amen.
Well, thank you again, my sister. I don't know whether there was a question in there, but to reiterate, some of the points that had been, raised. One of the things that I found, and again, it takes courage. When you talk about mental health, and again, this is something that is so taboo. This is something that is so hidden. It is something that is so, it has a stigma, and we talked about it before. And for the past couple of years, you've seen some great people who I thought, Anthony Bourdain, the guy eats everything that I would never eat, but I followed this guy, and I love his, experimental, disposition. I love the fact that he would go to different places of the world and bring to us on television the cultural differences in food and all of those things and whatnot. And the guy was at the height of his career. He was shooting the next episode of his program in a hotel room. And boom, he was found dead. One of my favorite comedian, Williams. How many of you have not watched, Mrs. Doubtfire? This guy is, and you would have thought, are you kidding me? This is just explosive. And again, this is a guy who, again, you watch him on Ellen. I love Ellen, the show, right? The show, yeah. And you see what, and you've seen, what he is in. And this is just, it's not family, but it hurt. It hurt because the perception is, if you're doing so well, what could go wrong? And the problem a lot of the times is that, number one, we're afraid to open up about it and talk about it. So I commend, it's not everybody who would stand here, okay? And first of all, if I have on my resume that I have seen in the past a psychiatrist, they're going to look at me funny. They will. That's just the nature of the thing.
Yes.
You understand what I'm saying? So, and hence the reason why I said before, and in your profession, for instance, how many young men that you have seen, just crying out for help, and all the system does is to dump them across an island where they are surrounded by bars and some must be tough corrections officers. And I say they must be tough because when you bring those guys there, if you're not tough, then it is you or them. Okay? So the system does absolutely nothing to, one, provide avenues for exploration of why the problem is. We are surrounded also by a political system and a structure that does not pay attention. And this is why it must be us. In programs like this, it's important so that we could begin to talk about it. There are some people, and I tell folks all the time, I have 3 people in my family who have committed suicide. 3. And when I told that to my wife, she said, that runs in the family, so that's a problem right here. But by the grace of the living God, as I said to you, there was a problem that I thought, and thank God, I don't know if I had not taken the path for which God had led me through an academic process that involved rigor, that involved thoroughness in thought. Okay, you have to be systematic in your thinking. It's not just if A is the way it is, why? So I asked the question, why? Why is it that I found myself always antagonistic towards women? And all my relationships were just going crazy. And I thought, engaged 3 times. And it's just like, and the problem is not them. I had people crying, calling my sisters and whatnot. What is wrong with them? Everything is going on and whatnot. And I'm thinking, okay, so it's not me, it's you. You just too good. But and that was a problem. And when I tell folks that, again, I am at a point, and perhaps it is because I am at a point where I don't really necessarily care too much about other people's perception of me. And it is true that all of us are not in that position. This is the reason why I believe that it is even more important for us to seek the help that we need. Find some people who are confidential. That's another thing we didn't talk about, HIPAA, and the relationship between what you tell the therapist and what the law prohibit them to actually, and we didn't get into all of those things that you should know about. But these are all things that we need to come to the fore, and we need to be able to speak about it openly. And to the point that you made, I am sorry, and I have said this in other fora, that the church, the Adventist church in particular, do not take that issue serious enough. There are pastors who are burnt out. There are pastors who are suffering. There are members who are burnt out. There are members who are suffering. But there is not the avenue for us to deal with those things in the church. And I think it's important. But thank you for your comment.
Thank you. In the interest of time, we have just about 3 more minutes before we can wrap up. Ms. King, final words, final thought.
It's a shame because, like, on a day-to-day basis, having a rapport with the detainees and the culture in itself, just a revolving door, reticism. It's sad, and you are only one person that there's the resources is not there, and I keep trying to advocate for resources for them, but you just get you're just you. We'll try tomorrow, we'll try next week, and it's just sad. When they go home, if they get to go home, and a month later, the same person, they're right back. Those that are going up north, you try to reassure them, yes, you're here for murder, you're here for this and that, but just giving them that little sense of hope. Even though you're there, it's not the end of the road. You can still have your family to come and visit you up north. Just trying to set that platform, but I'm only one person, and it's just sad that there's no support, there's not much programs that talks about mental health or educating our youngsters, because right now, as we see on the news, the crisis is in Brooklyn, the crisis is in the Bronx. They're just going crazy, and when they're in there, they might just come for a small, charge, and they end up, with numerous of charges. It could be murder right then and there, but we don't hear about it. It's always shh. It's just sad. It's just something that we have to do better as a people. Just check in with everyone that we're with. How are you doing? How can I help you? Are you in need of something? Just asking that question, because if you don't ask the question, you would never know what that person is going through. And not just that, that person, despite what they're going through, they're not, I guess, confident enough to seek help. So you leaving the platform there for, the open door that they can come to you. Just be, open.
Thank you so much. And I would really like to hear from Ms. King again in relation to her experience. At one point in my life, I thought I was going to, study mental health to be an expert witness. So I wanted to work with that population and stuff like that. So Ms. King, I'm very much interested in what you do. Ms. Morrow, final thoughts, final comments in relation to, self-care. How do we move from here? And audience, thank you for your patience. And after this, we're going to wrap up. So bear with us.
Whew. Even as a mental health worker, a lot of times we get overwhelmed because we see the disparities, we see the need and the lack of resources within our communities, and we know we can't help everybody. A lot of time, therapists, we experience burnout. And what I've had to do is call out consistently sometimes when I need to. So sometimes you have to give yourself permission to just feel, to just be. And it can be very hard because when you're thinking about the bills, you know, I need to pay my bills, I need to take care of my kids, I need to do this, I need to do that. But what I tell my clients, if you're not here, the bills no longer matters to you. So you are essential. You should be number one to yourself, for yourself, all the time. Because if you're not in touch with you, you can't be a good follower of Christ. If you're not in touch with you, you cannot be a good spouse. You can't be a good parent. You just cannot fulfill the task for which your God created you for. So be accountable. We all have this responsibility today to take accountability for our own wellness. When it comes to health care, when it comes to self-care, when it comes to self-love, Christians, give yourself grace. If you learn to give yourself grace, you will know how to give grace to your pastor. Because that will remind you, I'm human, I mess up, I make mistakes, stuff happens, God forgives me, and I can start again. A lot of time, even though we know the word, we tend to act like people who do not know the word. God says, come to me, plead with me, I will forgive you. God forgave me. But when I come to the church keeps me in the box for what happened to me 10 years ago. Today, I am telling you, do not allow, not your pastor, not your leader, not your elders, to keep you in a box. Because when you look at Calvary, when you look at the cross, it was Jesus who died for you. Give yourself grace. If you hold on to the past, because a lot of times with the type of work that I've done, trauma will follow you for the rest of your life if you don't stop it. And the church has the tendency of re-traumatizing you with your trauma. So, I have the power to stop the pattern. When they try you, tell them, oh, no, not today, sister. Not today, brother. Jesus forgave me. If you don't want to forgive me, that's your business. But I'm keeping it moving. That's mental health care. Have grace for yourself. Give grace to others.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I want you, brothers and sisters, to put your hands together. Yes, put your hands together. Unfortunately, those who, would have been with us couldn't, and we deeply apologize for this. But this was wonderful. I wanna give Doc a final. Yes, just because we wanna.
By way of information too, New York City. I'm talking about those of us who, work, and we believe sometimes we need breaks, and we don't know how to get breaks from our employers. New York State, the law allows what is called sick safe leave. Every person who works in New York City has 40 hours for the week. If you're working with an employer that is less than 100, if you're working with a large employer, a large company, you have 50 hours every single that you take to do anything to allow some free time for yourself. It doesn't have to be, a sick. You could use it to take care of, ailing family members. You could just take it and say, today I need a mental health day. The law allows that. Even those who work as babysitters, nannies, or whatever it is, don't allow people to take advantage of you that you do not know what the law provides for you. That is available. So I just want to put that out there. And I don't mean every single person after I leave here to call me and have a representation. And this is one of the reasons that I was keeping those things on the wrap. But we have to take care of ourselves. And thank you so much for being here today.
Well, of course, the good doctor is going to take care of me while I take a leave. He will be the associate pastor while I take a leave. But once again, thank you so very much, panelists, Miss Monroe, Mrs. Jean. You keep confusing me with this Monroe Jean. I got to know her before she got married. Miss King and Dr. Thomas. For you, audience in-house, you have been awesome with your question, with your interest in actively listening. Also, those of you on Zoom and subsequently YouTube, I'm not sure who is watching on YouTube. But like I said in my preamble, again, I'm saying this, I promise that we would not be able to touch every question that people have an aspect of this because it's so vast, it's so broad. There are personal questions that people would have and whatnot. And so do expect that there will be a follow-up to this because mental health, which is not widely talked about in the church, needs to be talked about, before an incident. And we don't have to wait for someone to have committed suicide to bring us to the table. And so take care of yourself. Not only do you eat properly and rest and whatnot, but have positive thought. Positive thoughts. Talk to yourself. Tell yourself that you are enough in Christ. Know who you are. Understand who you are. Love family and hold on to necessary core values and beliefs that will advance a cause and not necessary to societal norms that may not work for us anymore. And so there are some individuals, and I just want to take 2 seconds, who stays in a marriage that's not working because somebody told them that they should never get divorced. They have been abused and all those things. And so that is just to give you an example that we didn't even touch on that part. There are things that, a mentor, a supposedly mentor, an authority figure had said to you, and it scarred you, like you would amount to nothing. You are not, you're not enough. You can't learn and all those different things. And so these are very, very difficult things. And so once again, thank you very much, panelists, my esteemed panel. You did wonderful. Put your hands together for them. Put your hands together for them. You can do better than that. Yes, awesome. And so, once again, we thank you tonight for your participation, and we are hoping that you will be able to spread the message that you receive here today. Take care of yourself, health by choice, not by chance. May God bless you, and have a wonderful night. And my cameraman is saying that we will prepare for round 2, and I think so. Thank you very much, Doc. God bless you. Thank you, Sister Sherry Ann.